Mai ki tēnei hui. Welcome everyone to the Prosperous Napier committee meeting this morning. Just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page. If we could all stand for our opening karakia.
Tutawa mai ona, tutawa mai raro, tutawa mai roto, tutawa mai waho, kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Thank you everyone. So first on our agenda this morning, apologies, I had them from Joe Tareha. Everyone else is here. Can I have someone to move that? Thank you, Councillor Mawson. Seconded, Councillor Tareha. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
That is carried. Do we have any conflicts of interest with today's agenda? No. And no announcements from the Mayor this morning? No. Do we have any announcements from our CE? No. I'll call for any minor matters that aren't on the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Brooks. No, none. We'll move to the confirmation of minutes. These are from a little while ago, so I checked to see who was here and who can move, but looks like most of us are safe. So just that we're confirming that the minutes of the Prosperous Napier meeting held on Thursday the 7th of September 2023 be taken as a true and accurate record of the meeting. Thank you for moving. Councillor Mawson, can I have someone to second that please? Thank you, Councillor Price. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. All right, well, we'll head into our first agenda item of the day. We have 5. This is the direction for the preparation of the 3-year plan, 2024 to 27. I'd like to invite up Stephanie Murphy, Caroline Thompson and Danica Reo, please. We should add that to the run sheet. Just check all your cell phones.
It's only for milk.
Thank you, ladies, just when you're ready.
Morning.
Morena.
So I thought it'd just be helpful to run through a handful of slides since the paper's quite meaty, just to provide an overview, and then we can open up for questions at the end. So, to enable the preparation of Napier City Council's 3-year plan, elected members have attended workshops over the last year to provide direction on a range of components that feed into the plan. So this report summarises the context, including the legislative backdrop and the challenges we are facing, and the direction provided so far in relation to the development of the plan. So this report contains the following information for approval and formal adoption by Council. Direction on the finance and infrastructure information that will underpin the combined finance and infrastructure strategy. Proposed topics for consultation that is scheduled to begin on 25th of March. And direction on strategic priorities and community outcomes. Sorry, there we go. Is that a bit better? So I thought we could just run through some of the key points from these sections, starting with the information underpinning the combined finance and infrastructure strategy. So key points from here. An extensive review was undertaken before draft capital and operational budgets were taken to elected members in December. Further elements need to be finalised before a rates increase can be confirmed, but draft budgets are currently indicating a rates increase in the low 20% range. Council is forecasting total capital spend of $1.1 billion over 10 years, just noting that that figure may change as budgets are further refined. Officers with elected members to identify the infrastructure challenges we face is detailed in the paper. Further work is being undertaken to identify our approach to these challenges. And since both strategies will cover a 10-year period, officers have recommended preparing a combined finance and infrastructure strategy. Just in relation to the 10-year period, that's just due to the SWIL requirements only requiring us to produce a 3-year plan, and then the decision made at audit and risk to instead provide financial information in general for a 10-year period, just to provide further transparency. So on to consultation and informed topics. I'm not going to read all of this out, but I just wanted to highlight the consultation, the expected consultation topics that have been included in the table in the paper. And then also the informed topics, which are bullet points below the table. Just noting this information is a skeleton and the consultation document will provide further context around each topic. Just a note from Community Services, the intention for the Faraday Centre as a facility to be reimagined, and then there was a point about Te Pahinga as well, was there, Steve?
And just to add to that, in relation to Te Pahinga, that will also be considered as part of the Halls review, which is programmed for year 2. Sorry. Thank you, Venice.
And then just to end before we open up for questions, I thought it would be helpful just to have an overview of the program ahead. So the next key date being the 14th of March, where the consultation document will be adopted. Public consultation beginning on the 25th of March to the 26th of April. Hearings and deliberations at the end of May, and then adoption of the plan on the 27th of June. So that's all from me in terms of an overview. Do you guys have anything else to add?
Questions?
No? Cool. Happy to take questions.
Great, thank you guys. Happy to open now. If anyone has questions, queries. Going once. I think it's, thank you, Councillor Brown.
Kia ora. Thank you for all of this. Just thinking if there's members of the public out there who have read the paper and are interested in that table around the CAPEX projects that that are high spend but require minimal officer input to include. Can you just give us a high level of that, what that table means and what the sort of implications are for our budget?
Yes, and through the chair. So in that table, the first column, first row, there's a vested assets category under capital. Vested assets are where a developer might pay to put in some infrastructure in a new subdivision or a new development, and then that gets vested back to the council. So we include it as capital. It's an accounting thing. We need to register that asset on our fixed asset register, and so it doesn't require any actual resource to build, but it forms part of our capital. Property purchases, those are just transactions where we're buying property. And Omaranui, that's the landfill that's jointly owned by Napier and Hastings councils and operated by Hastings. So they operate it and we fund it, our share being around 33% of the cost. And then Parklands is just a pure development. Once again, it's more transactional.
Anyone else? I think that's a sign of a very well-written paper and a well-written workshop process too, that everyone feels on the same page. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, through the Chair. Just a question of clarification. In the list of projects we have the Ahuriri Regional Park, and there's a note around realigning that funding in line with the decisions that Hawke's Bay Regional Council is making. I just wanted to get clarity that we are retaining the operational cost, so there was an OPEX and a CAPEX budget assignment for that project, so just getting confidence that that operational cost hasn't been realigned as well.
No, the operational cost has remained in the budgets.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Oh, well, if there are no further questions, I will look for someone to move, please. Thank you, Mayor Wise. I'm happy to second from the Chair. I'd like to speak.
Thank you, through the Chair. So this 3-year plan, or typically our long-term plan really is one of our key planning documents. And it's particularly important at the moment in light of the environment that we've been working in recent years with both the national and international events that have been occurring. We have spent many hours alongside our council officers working on this 3-year plan, and I guess that's reflected in the fact that we don't have a lot of questions today, because we do have a good understanding of what we're proposing and the direction that has been provided, which has absolutely been underpinned and guided by our strategic priorities. And just for the benefit of any community members who may be online, you know, we have 5 strategic priorities: a resilient city, the ability to thrive and withstand impacts, knocks and shocks, nurturing authentic relationships with our community and partners, spaces and places for all, a great visitor destination, and I think for this particular plan, probably the one that has really been pivotal is a financially sustainable council. And the key word to me in there is sustainable, because this is about us being able to achieve our objectives for our community, but at the same time trying to keep it affordable for ratepayers. And I guess that has been the balance that we have strove for throughout the process of compiling this 3-year plan. And as has already been publicly announced, we are currently looking at a proposed rates increase in the low 20s, and I can appreciate for many that that may sound unaffordable. And I did just want to take a moment to actually talk through the process of how we've arrived at that figure. So I think firstly it's really important to recognise that as a council we actually face exactly the same cost pressures as everybody else within our community, whether that's an individual, a family or an organisation. We face the inflationary pressures. We face the spiralling insurance costs, and in some regards probably even more so than others in light of Cyclone Gabrielle. We face the rising wage costs, and we want to be able to look after our staff. In addition to that, as mentioned earlier, we have a challenging environment at the moment with all the additional pressures. Cyclone recovery, so both the ongoing recovery from Cyclone Gabrielle, but also ensuring that we build capacity for any future events that may hit us. Working with a new government, and inevitably there will be additional resources or costs incurred as we work through that relationship. The Three Waters reform, and that's being obviously reversed by the new government, what that means for us, and all the other reforms in terms of the Resource Management Act, etc. All of these things add to our costs. We are also still experiencing the ongoing impact of our 2020 flood and ensuring that we're investing in our stormwater for that, and there is still an impact from COVID. In addition to that, we have recognised that there has been underinvestment in some of our facilities and infrastructure, and we need to rectify that. We need to ensure that we are providing safe and the right appropriate infrastructure and facilities to our community. I think it's also really important to note that within this 3-year plan, there are actually no new services or activities planned. So that proposed rate increase is simply to maintain the level of service that we are currently providing. I've had a number of community members contact me and ask the question, well, why don't you just stop doing things? I think one gentleman said, just close the MTG, which I'm sure there's many people that would not be happy about that. He might not go there, but others do. And this, again, is the challenge that we face. We have many diverse people within our community with many different needs and wants, and we have a responsibility to find the right balance. In terms of closing a facility or stopping an activity, so for example, we could reduce rubbish collection to once a month. I'm sure that would not be well accepted by our community, but these are the sorts of things we could do to reduce our costs. We can't actually just go ahead and do that. Legislatively, we are required to consult with our community with regards to any proposed change in a level of service, and that can take up to 12 months. So we could not do it as part of this 3-year plan. And I really encourage our community to actually come and talk to us during the consultation period if you have ideas about how we could save costs, if you have a view on some of our facilities or some of the services we provide, please come and tell us about it, because that will be the trigger point for us potentially looking at reducing what that service is or looking at how that facility's run. But we need you to come to us, and then we can start looking at how we can reduce costs by reducing our services and activities. Part of our 3-year plan and the workshops we've done has also very much focused on ways that we can generate new revenue. Our primary source of income is rates. We are quite fortunate in that we do have a number of facilities, tourist facilities, that some do generate a profit, certainly not all of them by any means, but we're always looking at other ways to generate different streams of income. And there's some papers later on in our meeting today around our investment strategy and how we can actually change things that we're doing internally to have a more of a commercial focus to be able to generate revenue, which will then help us to offset the rates that we have to charge our ratepayers. I think the final point I want to make is that fundamentally the way that local government is funded is flawed. And this will be reflected very clearly in all the councils around the country this year with their long-term plans. There will be a number of councils in a similar situation to us who are proposing double-figure rates increases. We've signalled to central government that there needs to be a significant change in the way that councils are funded, because we simply do not receive the level of funding at the moment to be able to invest in the infrastructure and provide all the services that we are expected to provide, and to be a financially sustainable council. So really just wanting to provide some of that context and background, and this is why I wholeheartedly support the motion before us today around the 3-year plan direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. I reserve my right. Is there anyone that wants to speak against this morning? No. Look, just quickly, I think Mayor Wise has probably covered everything off, but I did also just want to take the opportunity to say, for those who haven't read the paper, there were some very strict criteria in order for us to keep projects in our budget for this plan, and they're really, I think they clearly define what the focus is when we're sticking to our knitting, so to speak, and just doing the things that we already do. But just so that you understand, so they're our statutory requirements, so things that meet legislative rules and regulations. We've got our recovery criteria, so stuff that relates to Cyclone Gabriel, Three Waters, as previously mentioned, contracted projects which are already in train and we are bound to complete, things that we've received external funding for that particular project, and discretionary if it doesn't fall into any of those, and of course renewals, so tucking money away for the future to look after your assets on your behalf. So I will put the motion that we receive the report for the direction of the 3-year plan and confirm it as being a record of direction setting for the development of that plan. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, guys. Right, our second paper this morning is around the due diligence report of the civic accommodation business case. So I'll invite Darren up to present that.
Morena, councillors. Feel a bit lonely up here after being free before. And certainly how hot it is in here. So thank you for hearing me this morning. Today's purpose of the report is to go back on the due diligence of the civic accommodation business case. You may remember that I brought that paper to you on the 21st of September in this very room, basically the endorsement of that business case for our civic administration building. And as part of that paper, we looked at other kind of due diligence that we wanted to do to be absolutely assured that this is the right direction for council. And what we had at our advantage is we already had a team mobilised for Tiaka. So we had civil engineers, structural engineers, architects, and planning expertise that we were able to use on that due diligence to test that business case to make sure that is the right direction for council. And to test mainly the big assumptions of that business case, that the preferred option was option 2, which was a developer-led direction for council. Basically, that is the 90-year ground lease, and then for a developer to come and construct our civic accommodation for us, and then that we become core tenants of that facility henceforth. So what we did is through that, we also tested the assumption that is in the business case that you essentially would have to demolish the tower to be able to achieve that because of building regulations and planning consent requirements. And that was kind of budgeted around the 20 million mark in the business case. So what we did is we did some extensive due diligence on the current structure on that library tower. And what I've mentioned previously, that tower is actually structurally pretty good. It needs strong work done to it. So essentially, we need to lighten the load of that building. So my terribly pithy analogy is, imagine you start off on the journey, you've got your backpack on, and then you've picked up your grocery shopping, and you've gone on a 30-minute walk, and suddenly you're not as stable on your feet as you were, and then along comes a shake, and then you fall over. So what we're doing is we're basically taking the shopping bags and the backpack off of this building to lighten the structure, to make it more sound, so if a shake did come along, you don't topple over and fall on the pavement. It also requires some banding. I know as we get a bit older, we occasionally need to wear a knee brace, ankle brace. I know I do. And so what we're looking at is those concrete plates that are on each floor, that they're band together, so when there's lateral movement, there's no pancaking. So that is one of the structural interventions to get that building up to the required National Building Standard. And also its importance level 2. And if we want to get up to somewhere under 90% of a new building standard, there's actually a reasonably cost-effective option of putting a concrete shear wall in the basement. And that will add a large level of structure to that building. The services, as we know, all need replaced, so that cost is still there. But what we found essentially is that the cost that we thought within the business case and the redeeming costs are actually a lot less than were planned, so about 10 million less than what was projected in that business case. So what starts to happen is that the cost for a developer to do it and a cost for us to retain that asset and deliver it ourselves becomes very close. So over the first 5 to 10 years, yes, it still looks like it is more cost effective for a developer to lead this particular project and for them to retain ownership. But once we start to get to the 30-year mark, actually it flips the other way around. We're actually starting to see it actually become an asset for us, and the cost and the rental start to be more beneficial to council. So yes, doing the developer option, we do see some cost benefits in the short term. Long term, council delivering it, it starts to balance out, and then eventually it looks more advantageous for us on our balance sheet, and we get to retain our asset in our CBD. One of our challenges within the business case is around the need for a subdivision. So any ground lease over 35 years requires a subdivision. And even if we don't say this is a strategic asset, this is a significant asset to our community. So that requires public consultation around that subdivision to make sure that the public are on board with that option for going with a developer. That is something that we would not have to do around if we continue this project. We have consulted publicly before in the whole precinct. We have done in the last 2 LTPs. The last LTP, we split it to front and back of house, essentially. We looked at the public services, our library, our chambers, and this is the part B, essentially. This is about, I like to call it, like in the brain centre of council that can bring in those close together. The other thing that I've heard from you as elected members throughout, particularly the Tiaka project, is that you wanted to make sure that the 2 experiences interrelate strongly. And with this being delivered by NCC ourselves, there is a greater ownership and ability to do that, particularly on the ground floor tenancies of the tower, if we do develop it. There's natural synergies there, putting people like Citizen Advice Bureau in there, English language partners, other community-based agencies that we could get small rental from, but complement the Tiaka project is beneficial. So basically what I'm seeking today is that we carry on with that option 5A, which is basically an NCC-led option, now that we've seen that the costing has come to far closer than what was there before. I also believe that option 5A mitigate a lot of the risks that were identified within the PwC business case, particularly the negotiations with a developer and what that might do to program, and also that kind of greater synergy with Tiaka. The challenge is we now need this to speed up to get as much alignment with Tiaka as possible so we can see some of those cost benefits. So what we're suggesting we do is we carry on with the concept design for our officer accommodation in line with what's happening with Tiaka. So when we get to long-term plan time, that is what we're consulting on, and that's what we can be ready to deliver it at speed. We're in a good position that we have a project team mobilised. When PwC did that business case, they didn't really take that into account. Councils aren't necessarily always the best thing to be doing this from scratch. If this was a tower in isolation with no other project next to it, the developer option would probably sounder in many ways because they have the expertise. We're in a position at the moment that we've actually mobilised that expertise. We've got architects, we've got structural service engineers who have been on this journey with us, some of them for over 6 years now. So they understand what we are trying to deliver. In the paper, we give some indication of what that look and feel might look like. That is very much broad concept. That's not a finished design. That gives you an idea how a similar language or vernacular architecturally would look to give a precinct-wide view on this, which I think is quite a nice thing to see and make sure that we are delivering a civic precinct to be proud of. That's kind of my long ramble on the paper. Happy for questions.
Thank you, Darren. No, perfect length ramble. I'll open now. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Crystal.
Through the chair, just I love the idea of keeping the building. I think environmentally it's, ticks some real good boxes. But just my question is just, we've got the capacity within council to run this project. Obviously we've got the architects, but have we got that capacity to do it?
There's a lot of synergies with Tiaka, so if we ran it as one precinct project, absolutely. Yeah. I think there are different strands of the same project, but as one programme of work, absolutely, we could do so, yes.
Councillor Greig.
Through the chair. Thank you, Darren. Can you talk us through the timeframes for delivery completion, the ground lease to a developer versus council-led redevelopment?
Yeah, so basically what we're saying in those two different timelines is there is a negotiation period that would be required within the developer option. Now, we've been reasonably, it's the right frame, balanced about that approach and how long that might take. That might be a shorter period of time. Also around our RMA and consultation requirements that would need to be done within that. So that increases the timeline on that. It may be that with the right negotiations, that could be brought forward. It's hard to give a true apples-to-apples comparison on that. The biggest risk in that is if during a negotiation someone would drop out, then we'd almost have to go back to the beginning again. The benefit of doing the concept work is even if we did go with a developer, we'd better understand what our needs are. So we need to do that work anyway. So it's getting us to a place that if we need to diverge off, we're still in a good position to do so. Does that answer the question? Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Just a question on the budget, the 48 million. Does that take the building to turnkey, come in and occupy, or is there further work beyond 48 million?
So there would be a soft fit out for that. We still need to understand our full requirements. There was a budget line of thinking there for around 7 million around what our fit out requirements are, and then with IT requirements, desk fit out, that kind of thing. So yes, essentially, plus professional fees.
Thank you.
Mayor Wise.
Thank you, through the chair. If we do go with this option and retain ownership of the building, will we require the entirety of the building for our staffing, or is there an opportunity to actually lease out some of the building and therefore generate another revenue stream?
Absolutely, there would be space to generate income. There's multiple options. It may be that we partner with another government agency, and that's potentially more integrated, or you do a standalone tenancy on the top floor. There's also tenancy opportunities on the ground floor, I believe.
Thank you.
Deputy Member Osborne.
Thank you, Darren, for the paper. I really appreciate the advice, and obviously it's something that we need to dig into where that advice is deviating away from the preferred option in the business case. So I also appreciate the work you've done to work through those key assumptions in the business case, which have led you to 5A. I just wonder if you could talk us through what you consider to be the main risk if we were to deviate away from that option 2. I am just sharing, as part of that question, I suppose, sharing my personal thought that I think those options to retain ownership and stay on site is really well aligned with community expectations. So I appreciate that, but want to fully understand what you consider the key risk to be in that deviation.
A couple of things that we've never really communicate that with the public before until that business case came up. Previously, we've talked about it as a whole precinct. Yes, we have talked about staging it, but we've never done that before. The risk is really length of programme, and anything was to fall down during that process, time is cost at the moment. And also, PwC didn't really take into benefit cost realisation of doing it as one thing, that mobilisation of one contractual contract, looking at shared services across the two things. But essentially risk is what that subdivision looks like. Is that actually attractive to a developer or not? How much money do they require from us to do a fit out? So the business case said 4 million, we've gone at 7 million for a fit out. They've just really put the hard fit out, not the additional bits and pieces that we need to be an operative office block, essentially.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, just digging into that key risk of deviating from the program, and obviously that has big impacts on Te Aka as well and the whole precinct. What is the next stage for us to essentially do our best in terms of meeting that program? What are we going to see next? What mobilises once we do this consultation to keep us as on track as possible?
Basically testing a full concept and then preliminary design of that tower and how that relates directly to Te Aka. So how does the programming work between that and specifically the chambers? So there's huge advantage around more programmatic options within that chambers. You may move some of the kind of reception or back of house activity that's planned in that chambers to sit in the ground floor of the tower to give more capacity into that chamber space. But basically a value engineering exercise. So we bring the projects together, we look at where the synergies are and start to understand what they look like to cost and to programme. So that happens within the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Thank you. And just one final, while I'm listening to those answers, the other thing that's flagging for me is how flexible we can be, or how sort of direct we can be with procurement processes. I imagine is quite important to keeping on track with that delivery process.
Absolutely. So if this was approved, that helps around moving into a procurement plan for that. A decision of council is a mechanism to start building that procurement. And we've already started that process, so we know where we need to go and we've had those conversations, but we need to be reasonably direct and get on with it.
So there's a number
There's a
of
mechanisms,
that are happening, and that's one of them. Okay. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Any further questions or discussion? No? All right. Well, we'll move to the motions in front of us so that we receive the due diligence report of the civic accommodation business case and that we approve option 5A from the civic accommodation business case, which is the NCC-led redevelopment of the library to be the preferred option within the long-term plan consultation to proceed into the next stages of the program of work to support that option.
Happy to move.
Thank you. Moved by Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Tareha. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Like I sort of foreshadowed in that question, I think when we looked at the options in the business case, which really laid out those 4 key options for us to either sell and go off-site, or to sell and stay on-site, to sell and stay neighbouring, or to retain ownership and stay on-site. I think we're all well enough connected with our community and this particular asset, which has been vacant now for coming up 10 years, that there is a real desire out there to reuse this asset if possible. And I think what the team has done is really provided us with a pathway to be able to do that. And not only to do that to retain ownership and stay on site, but to also potentially provide some income generation out of that asset into the future as well. I'm really excited about those streams of work that are in progress now, where we can be onto it with our procurement and our delivery, and we can also look at what partners we can build into this design. It's rare, I think, that a council gets such a lovely piece of property right in the CBD next to a new development, where we think about road frontage, where we think about revitalising an area of town, and we think about the synergies with our community spaces and the service we provide from our staff. I'm also equally excited about getting our staff all back together, which I know our executive team and all of our teams have been longing for since we broke up, like I say, almost a decade ago. So I'm really supportive of option 5A. I think the work through those assumptions which led to the recommendation of option 2 in the business case have really been well worked through, and I think that we will be able to achieve the best outcome for our community with proceeding with 5A. So very happy to support that recommendation, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Councillor Tareha.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm passionate about the Te Akau project, and I think 5A is the best option. It's going to be a Tonga, and I'm looking forward to seeing it come for our future generations, and I think we need to retain ownership and for the betterment of the city. But yeah, kia ora, fully support this.
Kia ora. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Anyone want to speak against the motion? No, all right. Well, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Darren. Next up, we have the review of our investment policy, and we've got Gary Hrustinsky to come and present to us today.
Good morning, everyone.
Morena.
It's going to be rather dry and boring after all of that. My apologies. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval for amendments to the investment policy. Council is in the process of exploring its investment strategy, and part of that work requires amendment to our policies. This would have been better if some of the papers had been reordered a little bit, because the next few should be taken kind of as a whole. So I'll just provide a bit of scope there. So there are 3 material amendments to the policy. So the first is to recognise council as a developer of property. Council already does this. Parkland's been a main example. But this clarifies the desire of council to derive a commercial return from the activity. The second is recognising council as an owner of investment property. Again, council already holds a significant portfolio of property across the city. This amendment recognises that activity. And the third is to expand the use of council-controlled organisations or council-controlled trading organisations where council deems it appropriate. Now, I need to stress where it deems it appropriate. There are other smaller amendments that improve flexibility at administering council investment portfolios. I should also note that consultation is not required for this policy. It's one of a few specialist policies that don't require that. And I'll take the remainder of the paper as being read.
Thank you, Gary. I open for questions. Mayor Wise.
Thank you, through the chair. And I guess just wanting to reiterate around the change to expand and enable the use of CCOs and CCTOs. So that doesn't mean that that's actually binding us into doing that. It's just enabling us to have those types of entities should we see a need for them to help us achieve our objectives.
Through the chair, that's correct. Really, it's just opening up the option to be able to do so rather than committing council to doing so. So it's really around flexibility, and previously the policy has been quite tight around a lot of this. So it's just providing options.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Must be a very well-written policy, Gary.
Thank you.
Right, all right, well, we'll move to the motion in front of us, that we approve the amended investment policy. Can I have someone to move that, please? Thank you, Mayor Wise. Second, Councillor Mawson. Would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, through the chair. And I guess just referring to my comments earlier when I was talking about the 3-year plan, and this is one of the papers I was referring to in terms of how we can make some changes internally to provide us with the ability to look at different ways of operating and enable us to generate revenue in different ways. So it's good to have the paper before us, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mawson?
Or nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. And Gary remains in the hot seat for the next one. And we have our investment property portfolio policy leasehold review. Hand over to you, Gary.
Thank you. They get even more exciting. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval for amendments to the investment property portfolio policy. Don't say that too quickly again and again. So policies need to be reviewed at least once every 3 years, and it's been some time since this one has been reviewed. So Council's currently exploring its investment strategy, and that work is driving some of the amendments to this policy. So there's 3 material changes that we're proposing. The first is to remove reference to outdated reports. Whilst the information is still useful, there's time value to the information in those reports. So current data would be sought prior to making any property decisions. The second is lease contracts are already prescribed and fairly inflexible. So amendments will allow council to explore offers from other buyers where lessees decline an offer of freeholding. And the third one is the option for council to delegate to a CCO, CCTO or investment team has been inserted into the policy. So this is in line with council's investment project. And again, around this, it's providing the options too. There's no obligation for council to do so. And again, as this is an internal policy, consultation is not required.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Gary. I would like to understand that second change that you talked about there. I just want to get it clear in my mind. So where an offer to freehold is not accepted by the current lessor, we would entertain offers from other parties? Is that what that...
That's correct. We'll have the option to do so. At the moment, it's currently quite locked in that if the lessee chooses not to, then we remain bound to the contract. So with this, it would provide the option to do so if we chose to.
So through you, Madam Chair, just understanding that where a lessor has a right to occupy, are you saying there would be a scenario where we put the offer that we would like to sell that land that the lessor occupies, they decline, and we then could sell that land to another party, but the lessor retains their right to occupy? I'm just trying to get that relationship.
Under the contracts, we aren't allowed to.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is this does free up the option to do so later on down the track, but really with that, because it's so prescribed, it's just opening up the policy a little bit more for that. But yeah, in practice, we can't. So
that's what I was struggling to understand, how that would work in practice.
Yeah, so in practice, it's effectively status quo, but there was quite a bit of language change through the policy, so it was sort of providing a bit of consistency there with that. But in practice, it's not something that we could do.
Okay, thank you.
Just to tease that out. So when we say not in practice, what is the purpose of including it in the policy? Can you
that was just to provide consistency through the language.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Can
Councillor Price.
So we're threshing this one out a little bit. In that, if someone had a lease and put a lot of capital into facilities on the property and didn't want to buy or couldn't afford to buy or whatever, how do they sit then? Are they could be sold underneath them?
Through the chair, no, it can't be sold underneath them. So typically what happens is the lease renews, So these were created some time ago, and we're effectively bound by them. But there are situations where that can change. And so it may be that the leaseholder doesn't want to continue with the lease as well. They may want to exit from it. And so that's a situation where that would trigger this under the policy. So, no, we are effectively bound by our leases.
Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, just through the chair, if in that situation, the leasee would initiate that back with us, but this sounds like it's the other way around. And I'm sort of struggling with that, because it does sound like we can sell land out from someone and then they're left with a new, what do you call it, a new landlord who can then set new rates. Tell me, have I got that right or wrong? Or it's not, I haven't quite got it.
Through the chair, sorry, the language probably could have been a little bit better in that, but no, effectively it's driven by the lessee, and so as I was saying, within that, the first thing we need to commit to is the contract itself. So if the contract renews, then we honour that. If the contract doesn't renew and they choose to buy the property, then we honour that. If the contract doesn't renew and they choose not to buy the property, then in that situation they'd be looking to exit anyway. So that's where we'd have the option to do so. So it's not an enforced action, so to speak. It's one that's really driven by the occupier, the lessee.
So just through the chair, follow-up, how is that different from what we would currently do?
It's not different. It's just, as I was saying, when I was reworking this, I was just trying to provide some consistency around the language in the policy.
And so, sorry, just to, I guess, make it as simple as possible, just so that I've got it in my head. So there's basically like a hierarchy of agreement, isn't there? Policy sits underneath it, but the contract is what determines the actions,
That's
of the
correct.
relationship.
We're bound by the contract first and foremost.
Okay.
So policy is just something that guides below that.
Yeah. Is that? Councillor Brown.
Through the chair. So the policy sits there, the contract sits there, and the only way that the land can be sold is if the lease agreement ends because the leasee does not want to renew.
Yeah.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Or if the lessee wants to buy it.
Yes, so effectively the power with that sits with the lessee.
Yep.
Any further questions? Comments? I think we've got it clear now.
Sorry, just one.
Oh, Councillor Mawson.
Sorry, through the chair. So Gary, just moving forward, so say the lessee of the property, the owner of the property sells, the lease agreement's done, then the new owner comes in, does that lease agreement that they then have sit above the policy?
Yeah.
Through the chair, so if the lease agreement was to come to an end, we would be in a position to potentially renegotiate a new one if the lessee exits the property.
Yes.
So in that situation, that would depend on the contract that we put in place, really. So we, as part of the overall work that we're looking at, we may not necessarily want to maintain a leasehold property. We may look to freehold it or do something else with it. So that's where we would have options to do so. But effectively, it's the exiting of the lessee is something which would trigger our review of that or the upcoming exit.
Okay, just through the chair, sorry, just to sort of tease that out a little bit more, I guess what I'm saying is if the property was sold as a leasehold property, the new owner then has a contract with us, just making sure that that new owner, if they don't choose to freehold that property at that point, still has the ability to, saying this wording doesn't turn and backfire on them.
So just to clarify, are you talking about us selling the contract or the underlying?
Selling, the business selling, not the property.
Business.
Yeah, the contract remains.
The business selling.
The business selling. So the underlying lessee would have to negotiate a way out. But the thing is that the remainder of the contract the contract would stay in place for the remainder of that period. It's not the ceasing of the The contract doesn't cease. It continues on for that period.
Regardless of who is on the property.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, that took a little while.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Worked it through. Any final questions? Great. But we've got Mr. Monica.
Yeah, just thinking about what Gary is saying in relation to that, I think it might be useful if we just get a little bit of advice. Can you not hear me?
No, well, no one can hear you online, so.
Just in relation to that last point. It's one of those mornings.
Isn't it?
Anyway.
Take 3.
Just in relation to that, there is probably a bit of murkiness around the contract that we have under the lease and whether or not that can be sold as a going concern, like a going contract. And just as a suggestion, we could get some advice on that to clarify that point. I think that's what is coming through as a bit of as a query point, and come back on that matter to so we know exactly how much room we've got in terms of selling something while retaining a tenant. Having the lease holder keep their rights under the current lease, but you actually sell that to somebody else. So is that the question that I think you're asking?
I think so, yes. Yes.
So I wonder if that's useful. Yeah.
Thank you, Richard. I guess just procedurally, does that mean that we leave this paper on the table, or would we?
We can take that as an action.
Yeah. But are we? Yeah. Could we do a subject to?
I'm happy to move it lay on the table and come back with the advice.
With the advice, Mayor Wise?
Yeah, and sorry, just through the chair, just sort of expanding on what Richard has said there, because I guess in the commercial world, it's standard practice when a tenanted property and the business within it is sold, that the landlord actually has to give permission for the lease to transfer.
Yeah.
So it would not surprise me if there was a similar clause in our contract. So I think that advice is very good advice for us to look into that. And so if collectively as a group that's something that we want to confirm, I would, yes, say let's have it, as opposed to laying it on the table, have it a subject to seeking legal advice on, transfer of leases and our ability, our role in that.
Okay. Transfer. Legal advice of transfer of leases. Yeah, banks. Sorry, Tame, we'll just get this. Do we mean to, was it subject to legal advice?
Business could change its name. It could be the same thing. Trigger.
So we've got a little bit of discussion around those two options, a lay on the table or a subject to. Any further discussion on that? Any preference? Speak now. Councillor Brown?
Through the chair, just wondering what the implications would be and whether there would be changes to the policy if it does come back, that we are then significantly changing the current circumstances for the lessees. So I'm not sure, because we don't know what the advice will be.
So the material changes to the policy as it currently, as suggested, I'm assuming that that has been taken into consideration in the drafting of the amendments?
Sorry,
how it might affect current lessees that it's applied to,
that has been considered.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so not so much, but if this change was made, still, would it affect them?
At present, no.
currently? No. Okay.
Just a follow-up question through the chair. Would it potentially, and it's a really ignorant question, would it potentially affect the the value that they'll be able to sell their business for? 'Cause that's,
Through the chair, no, it
No.
wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, just through the chair. Seeing that there is a lot of murkiness here, and over the years, if you've been a councillor going back a little while, you know that leasehold land and property has been very contentious and taken up a lot of time and effort. It would be my preference to,
Lay it on the table.
well, either lay it on the table or have some means that it does come back through the formal council proceedings. So whether that's lay it on the table or vote and then bring it back to formal council.
We can bring it at the end of the month to the next full council.
You have the power to do that.
I beg your pardon?
You have the power to do that.
We have the power to do
You
that. Mayor Wise.
Thank you, through the chair. Will that affect our timelines at all in terms of our 3-year plan and what we have the ability to consult on?
I think instead of bringing it to the next committee meeting, we could bring it to council at the end of the month.
And that won't impact our timelines for consultation?
No, because it's just a couple of weeks away, so.
Yes, it's no trouble. This, again, because it's an internal policy, there's no consultation or other processes required for this, and so provided we do that in the interim, then that'll be just fine.
Okay. So,
Are you going to defer approval?
yeah, I think so.
Subject to the legal advice in the council report. And there is a
council meeting
at the end of this month or the end of next month? 14th March.
So we'll include a B in our, we're just rewriting the recommendation, and we don't have a way to put it up, do we, today? We do. Oh, we do? Okay. Okay, no, you go and do that.
The chair can refer it to council.
I beg your pardon?
The chair can refer it to council.
Yeah.
For approval.
Lay it on the table. Yeah, great. Great.
So we're just saying
Deferred? Deferred. Okay, so we've got a two-part recommendation. The moment that we defer approval of the amended investment property portfolio policy, subject to legal advice being sought in relation to the transfer of leases, and that the report be referred to the council meeting at the end of this month?
We haven't got one at the end of this month, the 14th of March.
Oh, 14th of March, for a decision on approval. Does that feel right to the team? Yeah, great. Thank you. Can we pop it up? Sorry, I'm visual. I'm a visual. There we go. So for those who can see it, that is the revised recommendation before us. Thanks, Carolyn. Yep, great. I'm happy to actually move from the chair. Can I have someone to second the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Sorry, I've got to do this to see you over there. My apologies if I've missed you along the way. Look, I think, we've come to a really good place with this. I think it's better to be prudent and to refer it to the next council meeting, and just so that we can get that little bit of clarification. So thank you to everyone thank you, Gary, for your work on this, and thanks to everyone for working this through. Councillor Taylor.
No, nothing for you.
Great. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? And that's carried. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for your patience. And last but certainly not least, we have our investment strategy next steps with Mr. Munika. going to present. And I also note we've got Scott Hamilton, our advisor, online. So it's great to have you here as well, Scott. Kia ora. Thanks for everyone for putting up with the delightful uniqueness of being at McLean Park today too, as they mow their lawns.
Assuming air conditioning isn't in the capital plan.
No.
Air conditioning.
Yeah, unaffordable.
Through the chair, this paper seeks to establish a way for council to view their financial investments as a whole and look after those investments so that they can provide a return now and into the future. And the investments we're talking about, I guess, are the financial ones that are parklands and leasehold land in the main. And what this means is having a stronger focus on growing a financial asset base and maybe diversifying that through trading to manage the risk around being overly focused in one part, say, such as land. And having better focus on each financial asset as a whole rather than having the individual assets slowly eroding. So currently the way that we are managing those assets is really one by one, and we are taking parklands as a good example. Once that's cashed up, we are using that cash rather than thinking about that whole base and how we might grow that to be sustainable over time. The internal team are really excited about the opportunities that managing performance of our investments as a whole might yield, and committed to moving forward from the status quo regardless, which is, I guess, as I just said, treating the investments in a siloed manner. And I guess the change, in a very simple terms, is from managing output to managing performance. And if you think about parklands, for example, even our own targets are geared around how many properties we sell, whether the market is suitable for selling that number of sections, whether, how we're strategically trying to get the most from that land in a financial way is not actually in our performance targets as a council. It's on how many properties we sell. And currently in the quarterly report, that's what you'll see, a performance around that. So using that as a bit of a metaphor, we'd like to move from that output kind of focus, individual ones, to around leasehold and parklands in the main, to that overall financial performance and growing something for the future. In addition to that, Council has explored the merits of introducing a council-controlled trading organisation, and Gary's taken you through some of the other levers that might help us set up this kind of focus around our investments in a more strategic way that would allow consideration of the council-controlled trading organisation, because that would, in our view, that would help us structure our effort around our financial assets in a focused way for maximum financial return. And that return is not just now for, say, a 3-year councillor term, but for the future, for, sustainably for Napier for generations to come. So the paper recommends that we ask the public to allow us to explore and plan for a CCTO via the LTP consultation process. So I take it as read, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary. I didn't realise you were staying there as well. My bad. Open for questions. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Richard and the team. Just a question. How far through our thinking have we got in terms of what information we would provide as part of the consultation? For instance, I imagine some of the community questions are around how the makeup of that might work, what representation might look like on any potential entity. So what level of detail would we expect to see in the consultation?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we've been conscious that this is really a gateway situation where the LTP provides the councillors the mechanism to explore those things on the community's behalf. So the question is really, you know, we think we have kind of a better way to manage our financial assets via a CCTO. Are you happy that we explore that option to make sure it's okay? And those things like membership and all those sorts of things is really, in our view anyway, something that the councillors need to understand. What assets go into the CCTO, what the combination is of external versus internal members of the actual board, and various questions like that. That yes, the community are interested, but you can't really go do that until you've gone to this first stage of asking your community, can we explore this please? And you know, you'll probably do that in a way which takes it through in a systematic way, where you introduce that to the public in a timely way in due course.
Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, the expectation would be that we would collect that feedback and help use that to inform future workings on the detail. So
yes.
We would still provide an opportunity to receive feedback on that kind of detail, capture it and use it if and when the decision was made through the LTP to further progress that thinking.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
I understand.
Just a quick question from me around, so because this is a phased approach, with the first being us looking to the community to provide us with feedback as to the exploration of the creation of the entity, would a review of our significance and engagement policy need to happen further on as part of the process if we were to create the entity? Because is that where our strategic assets sit?
I think that you can separate those two,
Okay.
Because if we want to improve, I think, from the status quo currently, it would be beneficial that some of those strategic assets are unlocked. So they are currently not necessarily as strategic as we think they are. So there is a little bit of, you know, I guess that policy has been in like it is for some time. I can't remember quite what year it was first introduced, but it's about 20 years old, something like that.
At least, yeah.
Okay.
So we have not kind of consciously been thinking about the strategic asset list. That needs to happen in isolation of a CCTO or whatever, and we feel the need internally, if we want to be able to consider the financial assets as a whole, then we need that ability to be able to transact without having to go to the public on each time. So I think those things are actually independent, but they obviously help a CCTO should that emerge. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? Comments, discussion? Councillor Brown?
Oh, no, just
No?
they're happy to move.
Oh, Councillor Gregg.
Through Madam Chair, thank you. I think if one of our key strategic priorities is being financially sustainable, I think it's a really good idea.
Thank you. Councillor Brown is happy to move the motion that we have in front of us, which is to receive the report entitled Investment Strategy Next Steps, and Part B, explore the establishment of a council-controlled trading organisation for the management of council's investment portfolio, being Parklands development sites, commercial and, bear with, residential leasehold properties, investment-related deposits, and our managed investment portfolios. We've got a C, include the proposal as part of our consultation for the long-term plan. and that we endorse council building investment capability within its team to address immediate investment activity needs. So we've got a mover. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Crystal, would you like to speak to that? Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, as Richard's pointed out, there's some areas for improvement in how we currently manage our investments that we hold. And this is a step forward in us increasing the maturity and professionalism of how we manage those assets that we hold on behalf of our ratepayers to try and keep their rates as low as possible for the ratepayers of today and for many generations to come.
Thank you. Councillor Crystal.
Yes, I think it's very fitting that on Saturday it was 93 years since an earthquake which gifted Napier 7,000 acres of land. And much of that land was given to Napier City Council, which we have since sold much of that. And it's the reason our rates are so low in Napier. And what we've got left, I think, this is a way of protecting and moving that and making money for the next generations of what Mother Nature gave us. And so I see this as a really good step forward in especially looking after what we've got left for the next generations.
Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will just quickly. Absolutely agree with both what Councillor Brown and Councillor Crystal have said. I think it's a really responsible thing for us to be considering and hopefully doing. Really looking forward to hearing what our community think about it as well. I think Mayor Wise, when she spoke to our LTP direction paper, really emphasised the cost of living situation that we all find ourselves in collectively. There isn't a person in our city that isn't affected by that. And this is one of the things that we can do with our time in these seats to really unlock the potential for financial sustainability for the benefit of our community. So, I'm really supportive of us exploring this further. And, looking forward to seeing what comes out of consultation. If no one wants to speak against, that's cool. Well, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you, guys. So that brings us to the end of today's hui. If we could all please stand for our closing karakia. Ki tau te rangi Māori, ki runga i ngā iwi katoa o Ahuriri. Kia piki te ora, te kaha me te māramatanga i ngā wā katoa, te hei mauri ora.